So at this time, we're honored to welcome a leader whose voice has helped shape the global climate justice movement for decades. Mr. Kumi Naidoo, president of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, has spent a lifetime challenging injustice, from his early activism in South Africa to global leadership in Greenpeace and Amnesty International. Please join us in warmly welcoming Mr. Kumi Naidoo.
Eminences, excellencies, friends, sisters, brothers, and comrades in hope, let me confess I'm very nervous. And this can best be captured through the story. Speaking to an American audience some years ago at the end of my speech, a person put up a hand and said, "Dr. Naidoo, have you heard of Martin Luther King?" And I said, "Yes, he inspired me and many people in my country, South Africa." And then she said, "Do you know what his most famous speech was called?" Thinking it was a trick question, I answered very gently. I said, "I have a dream." And she shouted back, "Yes, it was I have a dream. When I hear you speak, it sounds like you have a nightmare. The forests are disappearing, the oceans are rising, inequality is on the rise, and so on." Therein lies the challenge that we face at this moment. How do we speak truth to power on the one hand and not sanitize how deep a crisis humanity finds itself in, but how can we do it also in a way that motivates, inspires, and encourages people to want to get involved to deal with the biggest problem that humanity has ever faced? Today, we pay tribute to all those who supported Pope Francis when he gave us the prophetic gift of Laudato Si 10 years ago. We also welcome the commitment just expressed by Pope Leo to continue along that path. As we gather here at the Raising Hope Conference, the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu ring loudly. "I'm not an optimist," he said. "I'm a prisoner of hope." If ever there was a time we needed hope, not naive or passive hope, but courageous, disciplined, and determined hope, it is now. And hope, if it is to mean anything, must be wedded to urgency. Let us not sugarcoat the reality we find ourselves in. Just as recently as 10 years ago, few of us imagined we would be here, facing authoritarianism on the rise, immigrants demonized, the rule of law under assault, brutal wars from Sudan to Ukraine, a horrific genocide in Gaza and in Palestine, and some powerful world leaders denying the science of climate change. 86% of the cause of climate change is driven by fossil fuels. 86%. Yet more than 3 decades, we have been standing in a flooding room, mopping the floor instead of turning off the tap. Worse, some governments and corporations are selling us super absorbent mops and calling it climate action. No, please don't clap. I only got a few minutes. The moment is frightening, but also full of possibility. Pessimism, my dear brothers and sisters, is a luxury at this moment of history we simply cannot afford. And the pessimism that justifiably emerges from our analysis, our lived experiences, and our observations can, must, and should be responded to by the optimism of our thought, our creativity, our action, our courage, and our sense of humanity. As Pope Francis reminded us, humanity still has the ability to work together in building our common home. Yes, our home is in disrepair, but we have the wisdom and faith to repair it if we act with urgency and unity. Let us be clear. The planet does not need saving. Let me say that one more time. The planet does not need saving. If we continue on this path, humanity will destroy itself. And the end result would be, once we become extinct as a species, the forests will recover, the oceans will replenish, and so on. So let us be very clear that the struggle that we engage in here is about protecting humanity's ability to survive on this planet. This fight is for our neighbors in vulnerable countries, particularly small island states, and that is why we see today the most powerful voices are coming from the Pacific and the Caribbean, from vulnerable small island states who are already facing the impacts of climate change. As Mary Robinson reminds us, though, that this fight is about protecting the rights of our children and grandchildren. She said, "We can't let our children and grandchildren look back on this critical period of history and say to us, 'How did you fail us?' when the signs were so clear." After a super typhoon devastated Philippines a few years ago, Catholic parishes and Muslim mosques joined forces to rebuild homes and plant mangroves. Those mangroves today now protect entire villages from storm surges. That is Laudato Si in action. Faith communities setting aside whatever differences that they might have to heal creation and raise hope. If they can do this in the face of tragedy, what excuse do we have to delay action any further? Faith calls us inward to hope and love, and outward to care for creation and stand with the vulnerable. But fragmented efforts are not enough. We urgently need a united planetary response and movement. The forces of denial are well-resourced and control much of the traditional media, social media, and now AI. Our movements must rise up and courageously meet this challenge. The Catholic community, through Laudato Si, has shown courage and now joined by many other faiths, but this must extend to all people, including those who might not embrace a particular faith. What unites us is far greater than what divides us. I want to now speak directly to foundations and donors. At a time when some funders are being told not to support civil society because climate change is a con job, is a hoax, you must push back. To put institutional survival above principle and purpose is not philanthropy, but it is philanthropy. Please don't clap, time is of essence. If we want to unleash the full power of humanity for climate justice, we must resource faith, culture, and art. Too often, philanthropy only speaks to the head. Now is the time to speak to the heart, through those whose messages reach the majority of our planet's people. 88%, this statistic might shock some of you, 88% of the world's population lives in the global south. 88%, and by the way, both ChatGPT and DeepSeek both agree on this number. These frontline communities, though least responsible, are paying the highest price, and yet they are also leading with the solutions, just as my brother from DRC just responded to all the examples of what people are doing on the ground. If our movements are to be truly global, they must not simply be enabled to participate more integrally, they must be created the space to lead our movements as well. Support them, learn from them, fund them. Philanthropic resources must be deployed in larger amounts and with greater urgency. And when people ask me, what about jobs? I reply, as many in the trade union movement today reply, when we say, there are no jobs on a dead planet. There are no jobs on a dead planet. There are no human rights on a dead planet because there won't be any human beings on a dead planet. Try explaining economic growth to a farmer whose fields have turned to dust, or to a worker whose factory has been swept away by floods. Clinging to fossil fuels will not protect livelihoods. It will most certainly destroy them. However, here's some optimism. Just as the world came together to ban landmines, to curb nuclear weapons proliferation, and to phase out ozone-depleting chemicals, we must now confront the deadliest poisons of our time: coal, oil, and gas. For decades, the climate negotiations, the COPs, we have gone there pleading for a fab deal. Not a fabulous deal, but a fair, ambitious, and binding deal. But year in, year out, as my friend Yeb Sano can tell you, because we've walked that struggle together, what we get are flab deals, F-L-A-B. I'm not talking about overweight here now, FLAB stands for full of loopholes, and you can decide what the B stands for. But there is hope. Nations with the fewest resources are showing the greatest courage. I want to today honor those leading the way and those countries that have taken the leadership and said the only way we get out of this mess is to complement the COP process by working to get a Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty agreed. And here I want to, that one there I allowed you to clap. And here I want to name the countries that have taken the lead. Vanuatu, Tuvalu, and here, if you don't mind, I would just ask you to join me in an applause for Minister Maina from the Tuvalu, who is with us and is providing leadership to the rest of the world. Fiji, Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, Niue, Tonga, Solomon Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, Palau, Samoa, Nauru, Marshall Islands, the Bahamas, St. Kitts and Nevis, and importantly, 3 fossil fuel exporting countries: Timor-Leste, Pakistan, and Colombia. These governments are championing this, and Colombia has just called now at the UN General Assembly for an international diplomatic conference for the phase-out of fossil fuels next April to accelerate and start the negotiation process towards the treaty. With collective pressure, we can reach the critical mass of governments needed to force global action, just as we did with landmines. The Landmine Treaty was negotiated by 44 countries outside of the UN system. Once the treaty was agreed, then it was brought within the UN General Assembly and was voted. And that's the pathway we are seeking to follow, starting in a formal way in April. Friends, hope is not passive. Hope is a verb. Hope is resilience. Hope is ambition. The Fossil Fuel Treaty is not a silver bullet, but is a concrete step to turn off the tap at the source. It offers us a pathway to a just transition that is fast, fair, and funded. And every one of us has a role. Policymakers, activists, artists, donors, faith leaders, progressive business leaders, civil society activists, and ordinary citizens of our common home. Let us rise together. Let us resist denial, lies, and disinformation. Let us realize the promise of Laudato Si by building a just and inclusive future, one where indigenous peoples' wisdom is respected and where indigenous rights are upheld, where gender justice is realized, and where our children are safe. Let us embrace artivism and harness the power of arts and culture, for one day our children will ask, when the moment of truth came, did we turn off the tap or did we keep mopping until the flood swept us all away? As Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1965 when I was 4 months old, there are certain things in our world that are so unjust and immoral that good, decent people should refuse to adjust to. He said he never intended to adjust to racial discrimination, religious bigotry, as well as to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, when millions of God's children are smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in an affluent society. If that was a problem in 1965, dear brothers and sisters, it has got 1,000 times more worse in terms of inequality and economic injustice. So I say to all of you as I conclude, be proud to be creatively maladjusted. Do not adjust to a status quo that is unjust, immoral, and brutal for the vast majority of people in our common home. And in particular, let us not adjust to the economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few. That is the worst injustice that we have become far too adjusted to. So I want to end with two quick things. Quoting what is often said that Gandhi said, and Gandhi did say it, but the first person that actually said it was a labor organizer in the United States. And he said this: first, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. And then you win. The good news is they are not ignoring us. They're not laughing at us. They're fighting us really hard. And if Gandhi and the trade union leader was correct, let's hope we are just one step away from turning things around and winning a fight that we have to win for our children and their children's futures. So I want to end with asking you a question. Where do your ancestors come from? And go as far back as you can and just shout it out. Okay, so let's go even further back than that. Wait, now, this is confusing for me. There's some white people here saying Africa. Okay, so just shout out why. Oh, because it's true. Okay, so it's beyond any doubt that humanity started on the African continent, from the Rift Valley, from Kenya to Ethiopia. And as, people moved through canoes and so on throughout the world, humanity spread. And I really want to say really sorry to those of you who lost all your color along the way. Apologies for that. So then, given that all of us, our ancestors start in Africa, whether we're comfortable with that or not, I'm sure most of us here are comfortable. And let us remember our shared roots. No matter where we live today, humanity began in Africa. This is where the human story starts. So in conclusion, I would like to invite you to rise and sing with us and to join the song, which just has two words in it. Phambili Africa, which means forwarded Africa. And given that all of us are from the African continent in terms of where our ancestors come from, this song is forward with all of humanity. I spoke so much, I didn't have any water. I don't know whether I can even get the words out now. But lucky I got this wonderful backup of This Is Our Home folks here with us. Phambili, 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 Africa. Phambili, 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 Africa. Okay, everyone now. Phambili, 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 Africa. Phambili, 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 Africa. Asante sana. Bless you. Thank you very much.
Michael.